If you're like me, I always love to learn about my favorite games. Whether it's a new location that I've never discovered, to a line of dialogue I must have glanced over, and everything in between. The main things that I love learning about Bioshock are facts about the entirety of the series. In this video, I'll be going over 20 facts about the Bioshock series that you might have never even heard of. So with that being said, if you have any facts of your own, please let me know down in the comment section below. I'm always willing to learn something new. Now, let's get into the video. But very quickly, I wanted to thank today's sponsor and a brand that I'm partnered with, AdvancedGG. I've been with them since the first of this year, and I personally love and endorse this product. Advanced is an energy drink formula that gives you all of the caffeine you need to remain focused, energized, or even hydrated. The best thing is, there is no unnecessary filler, no spiking with your blood sugar, it's sugar-free and keto-friendly, and there's no crash with the caffeine. There's a ton of flavors on their website which I'd highly recommend checking out. Be sure to click the link in the description or in the pinned comments to check it out for yourself. And if you decide to purchase something and want to help me out, be sure to use code TBH at checkout to save yourself 10% off your order. Thanks Advanced, and now let's get back to the video. Let's start off with the original Bioshock and what it was supposed to consist of. Very early on within the development cycle of Bioshock, they were missing one of the most crucial pieces for shipping a game, that being a publisher. There was an original idea that Irrational had, and they wanted to pitch this idea to potential publishers and possible investors. I'll be reading some excerpts from the original pitch for you guys, along with their respective pages as well. If you'd like to read the full thing for yourself, everything will be under the sources section in the description. So for these quick excerpts, I'm going to only read the most interesting ones personally, so here we go. You are in control. The player takes on the role of Carlos Coelho, a down-and-out, quote, deprogrammer, assigned to infiltrate a religious cult on a remote island and, quote, rescue a wealthy heiress from the clutches of the cultist. Once on the island, however, you find out that all is not as it seems. Bioshock features an unprecedented level of player customization and interaction during the course of play. The customization is accessed through 3 different axes: weapons, environmental manipulation, and genetical modifications. Players will be able to use their resources to conceive and construct their own weapons after their surroundings and even mutate the very nature of their cellular structure. Now on to page 2, we have the backstory. You are Carlos Coelho, a down-and-out former Black Ops specialist who has been drummed out of the service due to psychological instability. Taking a job as a deprogrammer, someone who kidnaps cult members and de-brainwashes them, his first job finds him undercover, flying towards a remote island called Salvacian, with members of a cultist religious group called Serene Dawn. Your job, to find the daughter of a captain of industry who has fallen in with the group and bring her back to her waiting parents. As the plane comes in for a landing, you realize the cultists have seen through your cover. You dodge the bullet intended for you, and it buries itself in the skull of the pilot. Now, the fun begins. Continuing on from that, we have part 1, the crash. Pulling your pistol from underneath your seat cushion, you are thrown into a duel to the death with cultists on the plane. A stray bullet slams into the pilot's skull, sending him sprawling over his controls. As the plane noses deeper into its death plunge, the very orientation of the world changes around you. You will have to fend off the cultist goons and reach the cockpit before the plane slams into the earth. Pulling yourself from the wreckage of the crash landing, you find yourself on a remote volcanic island. Exploring your surroundings, you realize that the island is several miles in size, covered with tropical vegetation, and partitioned by impassable cliffs of volcanic rock. You see thatched native huts, most of which have been burned to the ground. You can see charred remains of several individuals lying around you, their bodies strange amalgamations of human and what? This fact is going to be more catered to the newer players who haven't been able to dive deeper into the backstories of the Bioshock series. Or this could be for veterans who had no idea that these were actual concept arts. So, now the little sisters that we all know and love today weren't always intentionally little sisters. Let me explain. There were a multitude of concept arts and ideas that were thrown around. For example, and thankfully, these ideas were removed and cut from the finished Bioshock we have today, were that of a frog with a funnel in its anus, a dog in a wheelchair, and a few others. Again, I am so glad that those in particular were actually removed from the game, because I couldn't imagine myself rescuing a frog with a funnel in its ass. How would you even harvest them? Would you rip the funnel out, or how would that work? Thank God we'll never know. While first heading through Colombia, you hear a man singing in the distance, and you can notice a large crowd start making their way towards something in the distance. Of course, we now know that this was Jeremiah Fink and the raffle that he was holding, with a rather sick reward, to say the least. Well, this fair was inspired to some extent by a real-life fair that occurred in Chicago, Illinois during 1893 and was labeled the World's Fair. Now, I doubt Chicago's fair had the same reward, thank God, but the fact that a real-life event was a inspiration to the fair that was in Bioshock Infinite is rather cool in my opinion. And also, one other thing that I would like to mention is that this is actually canonically around the same time period of Columbia's conception, that being 1893, because later on in 1894, Jeremiah Fink became a monopoly owner of a lot of businesses in Colombia. The more you know. Now, it's no secret that Bioshock 2 Minerva's Den is an absolutely incredible DLC, and I'd highly recommend that you play it and experience it for yourself if you have not already. Well, did you know that because of Minerva's Den, an entirely new game studio and game was created because of it? Well, the team that worked on Minerva's Den eventually created their own studio called Fulbright and produced an incredible game, in my personal opinion, called Gone Home. It also seems that this game could potentially share a universe with Minerva's Den, but it's more than likely just some neat Easter eggs that the developers put in there. For example, there's a video game with the initials CMP on it, that being Charles Milton Porter, so he could have gone out after Minerva's Den and started making video games. There's also a couple of references to Minerva's Den as a whole, as well as a bottle of salad dressing that says Levine's on it, and the actual cover of that salad dressing has someone standing like Booker does in the case of Bioshock Infinite. Pretty damn cool if you ask me. This next fact is a little morbid, so if you're uncomfortable looking at plastic surgery, especially on older soldiers, then I would recommend skipping to the next one, but if not, here we go. One of the artists who helped create the models of the splicers took inspiration from the stories of Project Facade, which were the forms of plastic surgery that veterans and active military from World War I would go through just to be able to look like a human again. This, of course, after their faces were damaged, didn't make them look like themselves, unfortunately. And this was the early days of plastic surgery, so keep that in mind. I'll post a picture on screen, or you have probably already seen it. This one, though it is morbid, it's a rather interesting fact, and it makes me feel uneasy. What do you guys think? As we all know, the Lutece twins, more specifically Rosalind, were into quantum physics and theoretical physics. As a matter of fact, Bioshock Infinite leans very heavily into these two forms of physics. Well, did you know that Bioshock Infinite actually paid homage to a real-world theoretical physicist through Booker DeWitt? His name was actually Bryce DeWitt, who ironically is known for his work on gravitation and quantum field theory. So, if that sounds familiar, a lot of that was used in order to actually construct Columbia. So again, taking inspiration from a real life event, or in this case, person, and celebrating their works in the game is absolutely incredible. And I love learning about science, so this fact in particular made me extremely happy. This next fact is extremely upsetting. It's not for a morbid reason or anything like that, it's just due to the potential of the content that I'll be mentioning. According to former Irrational developers, during the development process and until the completion of Bioshock Infinite, they had removed anywhere from 3 to 5 games worth of content from Infinite. All of the E3 showcases that you saw, the majority of that was gone. All of the earlier trailers, gameplay demonstrations, etc., that was gone. Weapons, vigors, gear pieces, all gone. But there's also some relatively large pieces of content that was cut as well. A few of these removed concepts that I can personally think of are a multiplayer experience, much of the content from earlier trailers and gameplay demonstrations, as mentioned, and so much more. I would highly recommend doing a deep dive of your own. It's a shame that all of the removed content will never see the light of day. This next one is either going to be really creepy or really funny, depending on your own personal stance on this topic. Regardless, I'm not going to judge. You do you. After Bioshock Infinite was released, and a lot of people seemed to gravitate towards Elizabeth, there's no surprise whatsoever that Rule 34 was made of her. Of course it was, you degenerates. I love you anyway. When this was brought up to Ken Levine, he stated the following, and I do have to watch how I word this so the YouTube closed captions bot doesn't explode. Anyways, he said, quote, "I personally hate seeing corn or corn-a-graphic fan art of Elizabeth. It would be like coming across corn of your own daughter. I die a little bit on the inside with each and every page view." So again, it's either going to be really creepy or really funny, just depending on your stance on that topic. Did you know that the design of the Old Man Winter plasmid within Burial at Sea was created by a fan who posted their art and concept art to Reddit? This artist's name was Joe Trinder. I hope I pronounced that name correctly, and if not, my apologies. Joe's submission gained a lot of positive attention from fans and eventually grabbed the attention of Irrational and then of Ken Levine himself. Ken liked it so much that he bought the design from Joe and it was placed within Burial at sea. I love when developers enjoy what fans of their games can create in terms of concept art, fan films, etc. It's just a wonderful thing to see. There was an incredible secret glitch that took over 10 years to finally find. This was an inside joke between two developers at Irrational. Now, you'll have to do a precise glitch in order to access this, and I'll do my best to explain it to you. Make sure to have the art captions on so you can actually see this hidden message. You'll have to use Incinerate to get yourself down to 1 HP when you first meet Andrew Ryan in the second part of Hephaestus. You'll have to take a final hit from Incinerate right at the point where Ryan's monologue cutscene triggers. Remember, I told you that you have to be very precise with this, so practice and practice. If you can do this correctly, you'll spawn in a Vita chamber that's outside of the map. Look at the Vita chamber and it'll say the following, quote, "Bug this. If you can read this, Paul Hellquist did not do his job. Love, Klein." Paul Hellquist and Klein were obviously both developers at Irrational. Originally, there were quite a few concept arts about plasmids that were either not practical or ones that just didn't make it into the final game itself of Bioshock, of course. The most famous one, however, was teleportation. Testing and using this plasmid would literally and actually break the game or cause several issues with performance, so it was ultimately removed from the game. However, as you know, in Bioshock 2, there's an unstable teleportation plasmid as a small Easter egg from the Take-Two team. You can interact with it as it teleports all around, and you can earn yourself a tonic if you can complete all of the teleportation cycles. Even though our main character, Jack Ryan, doesn't actually have a character model in Bioshock, there's still an amazing detail that some players could possibly glance and overlook. Before the "Would You Kindly" twist is revealed, Jack falls down from a vent shaft and into a room. On the wall, "Would You Kindly" is painted, along with many photos of people from all throughout Rapture. If you actually walk up to the table, you can actually see pictures of Jack making his way through Rapture. Not only does Jack get his own face reveal, but it also shows that Andrew Ryan was paying close attention to him through his own security cameras. So, the next time you look at the "Would You Kindly" wall, look for the pictures of Jack. I promise you won't regret it. This one could also be overlooked by newer players or even veterans of the series who might not have caught it. Obviously, we know that Atlas and Frank Fontaine were the same person. However, when we first enter Rapture, Atlas is our quote-unquote friend and helps us navigate through the city. He has a rather emotionally sounding conversation with Jack about his wife Moira and his son Patrick. However, this is complete BS, and his family never even existed at all. As a matter of fact, Patrick and Moira was a play by Sander Cohen. We can see various posters of this play throughout Rapture, but mainly in Fort Frolic. Essentially, Atlas is leaving breadcrumbs behind the person that he really is. All you need to do is pay attention a little bit more and you'll start seeing them. Originally in Bioshock, there was going to be a Rapture Zoo. When I had the opportunity to actually interview Ken Levine, a link to that will be in the description or at the end of the video if you'd like to check that out for yourself, I brought this up to him. This was one of the pieces of removed content that he and the rest of Irrational wanted to keep into the game. However, due to time and financial constraints, it just wasn't possible. This would have been an amazing place to explore in my personal opinion. What do you think? Let me know down in the comment section below, along with what animals should have been included within Rapture's zoo, and do you think that those animals would have gotten a hold of Adam? That is a terrifying thing to think about. So, here's a fact that'll absolutely blow you away. The budget that Irrational had to work with on the original Bioshock was around $25 million, which, of course, sounds like a lot. Well, let's take a look at another game that came out in 2007 as well, that being Halo 3 with around a budget of $60 million. Well, with that $25 million, Irrational and Take-Two made over $500 million on this game as of 2015. Honestly, I can only imagine how much they've earned from Bioshock up until now, that being 2023. During development of Bioshock, multiple ideas were implemented, tested, removed, and you get the idea. Two of these that actually made it into the playtesting phase were the original Power to the People machine called Fire for Effect and the original Gene Bank called Plasma Quick. Players basically avoided these stations due to not knowing what their purpose was and what they actually did. So, Irrational went back to the drawing board and came up with what we know today, that being Power to the People and Gene Banks. Originally in Bioshock and Bioshock Infinite, the more you used your plasmids and your vigors, the more your character would have become mutated. Jack would have mutated, the more players would have spliced up to give those same players a moral dilemma. Do you splice and become more powerful, or do you want to keep some part of your humanity? That was ultimately cut. In Bioshock Infinite, we would have encountered vigor junkies. These individuals were deformed due to their excessive use and addiction of vigors. However, again, both ideas were eventually scrapped. This is a rather weird one that's in the game files of Bioshock 2. So, as we know, Augustus Sinclair ended up becoming Subject Omega and eventually having to be killed in Bioshock 2. Well, there's an unused clip in the game files titled GLU_SINC_dies, and it shows Sinclair tied up to a chair. Now, there isn't a lot of information surrounding this clip. However, I have two theories that could be plausible. The first is that this could have been right before he was turned into Subject Omega and we missed out on some sort of cutscene. The second could have possibly been some sort of interrogation of Sinclair by Sophia Lamb, again resulting in an unused cutscene. Either way, this one was a rather interesting find. Thankfully, this next idea from Bioshock 2 was scrapped. With Sander Cohen being my absolute favorite character within the Bioshock series, this would have made me take him not seriously at all. There was an idea that was proposed to include Sander Cohen in Bioshock 2, which I wouldn't have been opposed to. However, what they proposed is downright hilarious. They wanted him to be a 20-foot tall monster bunny. And no, I'm not kidding. This was an actual idea. Audio diaries that were removed from Minerva's den would have revealed that Sander Cohen was a patient of Sophia Lamb. I'll put them up on the screen for you right now, as we only have the transcripts. And again, I'm not kidding when I say they wanted to make him a 20-foot tall monster bunny. What the fuck? With the events of Bioshock Infinite taking place during 1912, there's no surprise that a lot of concepts and ideas were removed. This one in particular is downright absurd. For example, Jeremy Brown created a model of an F-15 fighter jet. Yes, an F-15 fighter jet that he wanted to fly by Columbia. One big problem with that, however, is that the F-15 fighter jet was made in 1976. Again, I know the whole multiverse theory is possible, but that would have been so out of place in Columbia. Why this was an idea, I'm not entirely sure, but I will say that his F-15 model looks incredibly well done, so my hat's off to you, Jeremy. Well, everyone, that'll do it for today's video. I hope you happen to learn something new while watching this. If you enjoyed the video and want to help the channel out, would you kindly hit that subscribe button? We are on the road to 50,000 subscribers, and I would greatly appreciate it. Also, if you wouldn't mind leaving a like on the video and hitting the bell to turn on all post notifications, that would also be very much appreciated. If you'd like to talk to me outside of YouTube, my social medias and my Discord server, which will be linked down in the description below, are the best ways to do so. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you all so very much for watching, and with that being said, I'll talk to you all again very, very soon. Take care, my friends.